Welcome, movie fans. Thanks for joining us for episode 116 of Reading Between the Reels, the premier podcast of silly space clouds. If you're a new listener, we're so glad you found us. If you've been enjoying the show, please like, follow, and subscribe, and review us on iTunes or Spotify. You can also support the show by posting on your socials and by joining our Facebook group. I'm Craig Dickinson, and I'm joined tonight by Corey Heitschmidt. Justin's out tonight, but should be back next time. Corey, what is going on? How's it going?
I am great. Craig, it is podcasting time. Yes, I mean, like, it's clobber time, podcasting time. We're going to do it tonight. Yeah, we got to get some more product placements to fill in the gap like this movie had several. I do drive the same truck as the Fantastic car, but, there you go. Maybe Hemi? That's our... It's got a Hemi.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice. So Corey, what have you been watching since the last time we recorded?
My wife and we're all caught up on Matlock, and I'm a little depressed because I'm loving that show. Kathy Bates, let me tell you something about Kathy Bates. She looks like my mother, and I don't mean this I mean this literally. Like when we got married, my wife said, Kathy Bates, we watched her in Misery, and my wife goes, my gosh, that looks just like your mom. And I was like, yeah, it did. And break my ankles kind of thing. Yeah. So, no, it was just great. So every time I watch Kathy Bates, it just makes me smile and happy. I lost my mom several years ago, but so it just makes me happy to see Kathy Bates because I just love her so much. She's so good. So anyway, but we were watching Matlock, and I didn't think I would like it. It was one of those, my wife started watching it, and I was just on my phone thinking I wouldn't. And sure enough, I fell in love with the show too. So what about you, Craig?
Nice. Well, a couple of things. I watched a few more Gene Hackman movies, and I think I kind of burned myself out on that because I watched a lot of Gene Hackman movies. But between the last time I recorded and now, I watched Get Shorty again, which I think I'd only seen once, and I really liked that. He's a totally different kind of a weasel character in that, different than he often plays.
Yeah.
I watched The Royal Tenenbaums, which I had never seen, and he's fantastic in that. And then I also watched Behind Enemy Lines, which... If you haven't seen it recently, that movie's trash, Corey.
Whoa!
So
we went opposite directions on that. We should have talked beforehand.
It's really, really bad. I did not enjoy that one. But what I did enjoy, I revisited, I think we talked about this off mic. I watched Firefly all the way through, which is still on Hulu right now. I watched there's only 14 episodes, and it's fantastic. I also watched the movie Serenity, so it kind of wraps that story up. Okay. And then... the last thing, on your recommendation, I watched Paradise.
Yes.
On Hulu, and no spoilers. And I super appreciate, Corey, that like the way you described it was very vague. And so, because there's a twist even at the end of the first episode.
Yes.
That like I saw coming just right before they revealed it. Great show. Lots of twists, great performances. I don't want to say too much because I do not want to spoil it, but...
Don't want to spoil it. But I gotta tell you, after that first episode, isn't that twist a different take on anything you've seen?
Yeah. Fantastic.
Like right off the get-go. Boom. Yep. We're here, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
How are you going to do that?
I've been a huge fan of Sterling K. Brown since I saw him, and I think This Is Us was the first thing I saw. I've seen him in other things. He's been in small parts, but that was like the first big thing I saw him in, and he's the lead in this, and James Marsden's in it, and he's great, and Julian Nicholson is great.
And can I just say, did you get a couple great 80s song retakes on this?
Yeah, that was the thing you had mentioned ahead of time. Yeah, so there's, James Marsden's character is a huge fan of 80s music, and so you hear the originals, and you also hear, I think, covers in every single episode. There's an updated version of those songs, so that's fun. Yeah, I love 80s music, though.
I love any show that references Die Hard, references any other 80s stuff. If you reference 80s stuff, I'm in there.
It's a bridge too far, man. Yep. And the Christian Leitner. So that's, watch it. If you've watched the show, you know what we're talking about. If you haven't, watch it, and that'll make sense.
Yeah.
But tonight, Corey, we're not talking about that. We are talking about Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. The last pre-MCU movie from 2007.
Yes.
Yeah. This is June 13th, 2007. So we're almost a year from now. And from 2007, Iron Man will come out and kick off the MCU. But when that first comes out, we don't quite know what we're in for because it's just another Marvel movie. But
yeah, I think this movie is it a branch of the MCU timeline that got weeded off is what happened there, Craig.
Yeah.
So no, it's we'll talk about this, but
yeah. So what do you think? What do you think about this film?
Was there a director's cut? I've learned I like director's cuts. Like
I did not find one, and
Dang
it's
it.
interesting. This is only a 92-minute film,
Yeah,
and there
it's
were
quick.
parts that I got bored this
Very
time
much.
through, which is not a good sign when it's only an hour and a half. But I mean, I enjoyed most of it. There was just certain moments where I was like, okay, this is a lot, and I love the fact that we took this on, that we watched 16 movies, we committed to 16 movies. But I got to say, the second half of this series is not nearly as good as the first half of this series, as far as the films.
Yeah. Listen, I think it's an okay movie. I've come to the conclusion, I think there are some standout things in this. Mm-hmm. Lawrence Fishburne is beautiful in any role he does. I just love him, okay? I think his voice in this movie is incredible. I think they absolutely nail the Silver Surfer kind of look and costume and appearance. I think this whole movie, he looks great. Cap. Sorry. No. Flame
Johnny.
On. Johnny. I love him in almost anything. I think I've seen him cockier in other shows. Like, I know he's supposed to play Johnny cocky and everything, and he does a good job with this. This was before he really became the MCU's poster boy. But he is incredible in Gray Man, where he's really cocky.
He is really good in that. Yes.
Love that movie, by the way.
Best part of that movie by far.
He's great in Knives Out, which we talked about in the
best
podcast.
part of that movie.
I mean, he's so good. You just got to let him get up there. And I feel like he was kind of cocky and kind of, that a little bit, but it was definitely reined in, because this is an early MCU. But here's my take, Craig. It's an okay movie. It's a little boring. It's definitely formulaic. It's definitely cheesy on some of the lines, and the dialogue is terrible in a couple spots. We'll talk about that. There's definitely some weird effects to it. Like I can't decide. Am I watching like a couple different movies all crammed together? Like I'm going to steal an element from this movie and from this movie and from this movie. Like people do with Zack Snyder. They do it all the time. They steal elements from his movie, especially Batman vs Superman, which I love.
Yep.
So no, and so here's my take. I went to watch this on Disney Plus.
Okay.
And I had to search for it to get it, right? And so I searched for it. I watched part of it, was doing my notes and things. Had to leave, come back, brought it up. And you know how they always have the continue watching down at the bottom?
Yeah.
They didn't have it there for me. And I think Disney's just like, oh, he's not going to finish it. Yeah. And so if they're not going to have faith in their product, I'm not going to have faith in their product. Because then I was like, well, crud, now I got to search for it again. So then I had to get on, type in Silver Surfer. Boom, okay, here it is again. Got to bring it up. It remembered where I was, but it did not put it on the continue watching. That's did that to me 3 times, Craig, because I watched this over 3 sittings. I'm just telling you, Disney did not have faith in their product. So if that's true, then, I mean, I guess that shows where we're at. I know it did well in theaters. It's considered a success.
Yeah.
I think those numbers are definitely skewed a little bit because the box office, this cost $120 and it made $300 million. Okay, and they're like, that's a success. Batman versus Superman cost $250 million and made $875 million and was the 7th best movie in the 2016. And people don't consider that.
Yeah.
The box office success.
And we didn't adjust for inflation, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
It's not that far off. I mean, we're only talking like 8 or 9 years apart. So, I mean, this.
Oh, yeah.
It's good. You'd watch it once, twice if you were on a podcast. That's my take on it.
Yeah. Well, and like a lot of movies, like the budget's up for the sequel and the profits are down. Right. The first one was only $100 million and made. 333. So, you're getting pinched in the middle, and there was plans for a third one, but this does kind of wrap things up. Also, like even watching this, 20 years later, it kind of feels, I'm good. I don't feel like I needed to see that anymore. And so it's when you see Chris Evans play Johnny Storm in Deadpool and Wolverine, it's like, oh, that's nice. I like that I'm getting more. But I didn't necessarily need it.
Yeah.
So.
He was great. Okay, see, now there's Captain America. There's Chris Evans being the little mouthy guy there. Yeah. That was fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. You literally, because that's what
Oh,
you're doing.
I didn't know I did that. That's
Look
clever.
what you did. Okay, so let's talk about cinematography.
Wait. I didn't get your take on this movie, Craig.
Oh, okay. Well,
come on now. Don't leave me hanging. I've got to find out if we're agreeing or disagreeing.
I mean, it's a movie that I own. It's a movie that I bought on DVD when it first came out, and I bought it digitally. I like this movie. I think there's nostalgia glasses too. I think for the most part. And when we talked about the first movie in this series, we talked about the casting, and I really think the casting is very solid in this film as well. I love Ewan Griffith. I love even Jessica Alba. That's kind of the weird stunt casting when we talked about that. But I love Chris Evans. I love Michael Chiklis as the Thing. I think he's fantastic. And then adding Andre Braugher to this, who I always love in everything I've seen him in. There's a lot to like in this movie. Is it a great movie? No. Does it have flaws? Of course it does. But I'm entertained when I watch this film. So it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's all right. I just think the plot is not as deep as you think it's going to be. It's definitely, and some of the, like there's just some things and elements on it that are just a little formulaic, and you could tell some of the writing was definitely phoned in a couple times.
Yeah. Well, I think it suffers a little bit from what people think Iron Man 2 suffers from, where it's kind of setting up something and at the expense of the film you're actually doing. Because it is very much, and we get to the end and it's like the mid-credits thing, it's like, oh, the Silver Surfer didn't die. And it's like, it's setting him up. He's not a one and done character. At least that's not the plan, right? That you're going to have to, assuming you're going to have a spin-off of featuring that character. So you're doing a lot of work to set that up, possibly at the expense of this film.
Yeah.
So, all right, stuff you saw: composition, color, camera work. What kind of things did you like, or did you pull meaning from this time through?
I'm going to pull about the color of the Silver Surfer on the surfboard, off the surfboard.
Yes,
I think it's brilliant, that part. I love the contrast there. He gets off the surfboard and he becomes this flat, pale, dark gray, like this just different skin tone. Then he gets on the surfboard and all of a sudden he's like the Terminator 2, just all mercury. And I think it's great. And then the moment he steps back on it, it just envelops him again. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of showing, not telling. Like, you can tell, and the sound design helps with that too. That he's powering up, and he doesn't look right. He looks weak when he's not, and they don't really tell us that. I mean, they kind of hint at that, like his power derives from his board or whatnot. But he doesn't. He looks off, and he looks that kind of gunmetal color is. Yeah, he looks weaker, just in that way.
And then camera work. I'm going to tell you the intro where he's destroying the planet. I was disappointed with that. It was set up good, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be fantastic. Show him devour a planet, but help us to know that planet had stuff on it, had life on it or something. Sure. You know what I mean?
So you're talking about Galactus at this point.
Yes, when that opening credit thing, and it set it up, and he flies out of the planet, and then the Galactus arms come in, and it devours that world. And I thought, you got to show the heartlessness of what he did. And I feel like the movie did this, even like it didn't do it later. Even it didn't set it up like that. It didn't show the heart. He comes down to Earth and he's starting to do it, and we see papers flying everywhere. We see some fire going everywhere, and then we see some like rocks going up into the stuff. But we don't see like people getting injured, people getting damaged. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Well, one, it's not a DC movie, so you can't show that kind of thing. It's an MCU movie. This is dark.
This is in a Marvel movie, right?
Yeah, this is dark. What is this, a DC movie? I'm just saying. So, like, I know they can't, but it's like, you got to put a little bit of fear and depth in your character to be the villain, to be the bad guy that has to be destroyed. So
it is missing a lot of characterization for Galactus. I think that's one of the main criticisms that people have.
Yeah, and I don't think the camera work on him is good at all. Like, I don't think they show him in a good light for their camera.
Yeah, and it's like, they talked about with the X-Men movies and how they didn't do the costumes because they were a little bit scared people couldn't handle that. Like, I wonder if that's the same. I'm assuming it is the same rationale where we don't show giant alien out there. We're going to make it all vague and it's a silly space cloud. But it makes the hardcore fans pretty upset.
Yeah.
And then excited for the new film because we could see him in that film.
Yeah. But color in the movie is great. I mean, it's a very vibrant colored movie, except for the Silver Surfer and all of that. But, yeah, that's the things that I caught. What about you?
Okay. Just want to add a couple of things that I thought they did some interesting stuff with handheld camera work in this one, where they don't. If it's not overused, then I think they think it's cool because it definitely has a meaning. There's a couple instances that I really liked with that. When General Hager finds Reed at the club and they go into the kitchen, they switched from a Steadicam to a handheld camera because things are off balance in this actual situation. We're starting to feel the tension from that, which I thought was a really interesting choice because it definitely makes it immersive, and you also kind of feel the tension and kind of the excitement and the nervousness of that. And that's a kind of similar thing is repeated later in the film when the Fantastic Four are trying to discuss their plan to break out of the military base and probably rescue the Silver Surfer. They're kind of hashing out how they're going to do that. And there's this really quick pan around as well, and it's handheld as well. So you can see that they're quickly talking through, and it's like everybody's kind of adding to the plan, and it feels, again, very immersive, like you're almost part of that discussion. And I really thought that was an interesting choice, and it also ramps up like, hey, this is really frantic. We have no time. We have to do this really quickly. So I thought it just added a layer of realism there. So that was kind of fun.
One camera work angle that did make me chuckle was when Galactus was coming back down, and I had wrote in here, they all look up at the sky to see this, space cloud coming.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of the scene in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, where they all look up and I go, oh, like that's, They all had that same look. They looked up and I thought, oh my gosh, whoever that camera angle was not a good angle to just like do that. And then it just showed, there you go, here comes raining cheeseburgers. So that made me chuckle. But
yeah. One other thing I do want to point out that I really did like was when they're the dynamic camera work following the surfer through space, and then especially the chase with him and Johnny, where Johnny's trying to catch him. Again, we talk about showing, not telling, like the power of and the versatility and like the speed and all of those things. He doesn't have, like, there's a little bit of wow, from Johnny, but we don't even need that commentary because we're pulled through it. And I love the way that that's done.
Yes. I think all of the camera work on the Silver Surfer scenes, except for the zoom outs where they look like two little lights just moving around. Yeah. But like the close up where he goes through the board and comes out the other side and looks at him. Cool. I was like, that's a great scene. That is fantastic CGI, fantastic work. They're in the tunnel and he goes right through the bus.
Yes.
Johnny's bouncing between a couple of trucks. And like, that is primo season. I mean, that is primo CGI right there. I thought that was great. And it holds up even today. That whole scene, that whole chase,
solid.
All of that holds up. Turns around, grabs him by the throat, just like stops him. So, I mean, okay, kudos to that. I may not have been a big fan of this movie, but there are some things in it that are very redeeming.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else on visuals before we talk about sound?
No.
Okay. Because we kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think, again, showing, not telling, in this case, telling us through the sound or showing us through sound, the whooshing sound of the surfer as well, kind of going by with that Doppler effect. Again, just raw power. Yeah. And just a great effect. And clearly that's, they had to make that sound. They're not recording an actual surfer. That was my favorite by far sound in this film.
I think that would say most of those things would all from that. And I did like how he absorbed the missile in the surfboard.
Yes.
Right? Because that's probably one of the few slow motion scenes that you get. Like that's a slow motion spot right there. Other than that, I mean, I don't recall very many slow motion spots.
No, I think I think a lot of these things, as long as you don't overuse them, they have more power because you're like, oh, I'm paying attention now to something interesting is happening. And as much as I love Zack Snyder, like a lot of slow motion in that match.
Yeah, and there was a subtle flick of his hand as the missile was coming that he was going in front of Sue.
He slapped him. Oh no, yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
He moved in front of her to protect
I had that
her. Right after he told her, "You remind me."
Yep.
And so I thought in my head, okay, most people might look over that and not see that, but he lined up so that he was in front between her and the missile, and then he absorbed the missile in the surfboard.
Yeah.
And so
I had that for body language too. I thought that was a really interesting character beat there.
Yeah.
As far as the music goes, I mean, I don't have a ton of ad from the last time that we talked. I still really like the main title. I think it's a very solid piece. We do hear it multiple times through this. There is a Silver Surfer theme that we get to hear, especially at the end. There's kind of a slower version of it as he confronts Galactus. And I love that there's, they have, a lot of times these tracks have kind of punny nicknames. Mm-hmm. And this one's called Silver Savior / Aftermath. And I dig that. And nice job, John Hammond. John Hammond, who returns to score this film.
Well, I was not a fan of the music. You know why? Because in the whole third act, when we're talking about the flying car and Doom, and they're trying to get the surfboard from Doom, it reminded me of like a Harry Potter chase scene, like just a lot of music, real loud music too, and it was orchestral. It wasn't, a song that you recognize. It's going to be just soundtrack music with that kind of theme and talk like you're saying. And in my head, it made it go down a little bit. It was very, especially with the flying car, it felt very Star Wars, Clone Wars to me, right? Yeah. Not a song you're going to recognize, not a song it's in the background, it's a little too loud. But because here's why. And I think Iron Man 2 kind of ruined this for me a little bit. Like Iron Man 2, when he jumps out of the plane, and they've got some
AC/DC's going.
AC/DC blaring. And there's a couple times in Iron Man movies where they play like a song that you're like, oh yeah, right there. And it just fits perfect with that scene. And I don't feel like sometimes you get that when you don't do a soundtrack song that people can recognize and pull from. And like, there's got to be a couple songs out there that would have been great in this movie. Especially if you got a character like Johnny, like catching on fire and flying. Like, there's got to be a couple songs, like 80 songs you could pitch in there that would kind of set a scene a little different than.
Yeah, I know what you're hearing. Like, AC/DC is so unique sounding that it's kind of out of time. Like, it doesn't really have a specific time period that you associate it with. So it's kind of timeless in a way. Yeah. Whereas this, because I was going to mention too, like in the club, there's a couple of diegetic tracks. Like we have Tambourine by Eve, who I'd forgotten existed. Sorry, that wasn't ever really my style of music, but also this, again, almost 20 years ago. And then Physical by Nicole Scherzinger, featuring Timbaland as Reed is dancing in, like, this is the second movie with a Marvel character doing a super cheesy dance, which it's catchy and it's fun, but it's also super 2007.
Yes. And I know you like those kind of soundtrack things but stuff, but in my head, I'm like, it feels very video game cutscene to me versus giving me a song like that I can recognize and that I can recall, or I don't know. It just seems different. Like sometimes you want that pump up music ready to go.
This one is a soundtrack album too. This is one thing we've seen trends with a lot of these pre-MCU movies. They all had soundtracks. They all had pop music on them. And then basically stop. Iron Man, I don't think Iron Man does. Well, I'll have to look into that. But like that was never a thing the MCU like made a big deal out of. And I think some of that was, with Napster and everything else, that like people just weren't buying albums. Yeah. Be they on CD or whatever else. Like we were buying individual songs. So maybe it's something that. Just one last thing I had for sound too is just how much, again, it's just always kind of cracks me up because it's lazy. But it's just all the exposition on the news about the wedding and then about the effects of the surfer. It's like there's so many other ways to do that. I do kind of like it because on the one hand, I guess I'm of two minds because the Fantastic Four are celebrities in this universe. Yeah. And so it would make sense that they would be all over the news, with the wedding coming up and like, that makes sense. It would kind of pull you out a little bit. I guess it adds to the realism of that film that you have those things. I just thought there's a lot of exposition on the news in this film.
Yeah. And I think the wedding scene drives me crazy. Like the helicopter comes in and it's like, oh, my wedding's ruined. And I was like, your wedding was just like fake grass put on top of a building with white chairs. That's it. We can set it back up in an hour. Like, come on. Let's be honest. The trellis was just it wasn't like this luxurious wedding. It was just kind of so I was like, you could set that up anywhere, but But I guess, yeah, the whole celebrity status of it, and yeah, it was something.
So we alluded to a little bit about performances. Like, I think the performances are pretty solid in this film. Like, it's nothing spectacular, but nothing pulls me out of it either. Everybody's just kind of right in the pocket. But I was curious if you had any first off, any comments on that, or if you had other lines of dialogue that you liked that we wanted to talk about.
Well, yeah. Performances, I agree with you, because here's why. If you put some other no-name people in these roles, this movie would have bombed so bad. Like, these are top-notch actors that are listed in here. I mean, this list of high-name people, I mean, there's some solid movies behind all of these actors that are in this movie. From Ian Greffel to Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Michael Chiklis. I mean, all of these characters, Andre Braugher. I mean, all of them, Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, every one of them has got movies attached to them so that you're going to get a good performance on them. I think the dialogue is a little cheesy. And I guess here's my perfect example is as soon as they get in the Dodge Fantastic car, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We had to get a little product placement. I hope they got paid for that too. I'm sure they did. So they get in the Fantastic car, and the thing immediately launches into this tirade of, I mean, let me just read it, because here's why. You know who I thought of when he did it? I was like, this is so cheesy. What we're doing is we've just now hit the third act, so we're going to have one of our characters summarize where we're at, because you've probably been asleep for the second act, okay? Yeah. And so now that we woke you back up, all right, we're now officially enemies of the United States of America. Victor is out there somewhere with unlimited power, and we've got a giant intergalactic force that's about to destroy our planet in less than 24 hours. Did I miss anything?
Yeah.
That is Tommy Lee Jones. That's who that is. That is a Tommy Lee Jones summary in every Tommy Lee Jones movie.
Yeah.
Is what he does. He does this whole summary. He did it in The Fugitive. You know what I'm saying, right? Like, okay, our guy's got it. He's had 24 hours notice. He's going. He's wounded.
House, outhouse, dog.
Yes. Yeah. And he just throws it all out there. Did I miss anything? Send me a coffee. Let's go. Like, I mean, that's exactly what it is. And so when he did it, I just was like, oh, that's somebody phoned it in on that one.
That's not necessarily a Ben Grimm character moment, really. I think you're right. It is. I mean, that's a time-honored tradition. On the other hand, like Shakespeare would do that, like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Like, it was a thing they would do, and
like to summarize.
To summarize, like, third act. Like, hey, here's what's been going on. I know it's long, and you probably forgot, but yeah, in an hour and a half movie, you probably didn't need to do that.
Yeah,
and I guess that's probably like a precursor to some of the stuff we see in the MCU, though, right? Where it's like we can't let a moment sit there for dramatic effect. We have to punctuate it with humor to pull it out. Paul. I'm picturing Paul Rudd in this moment.
Yes.
Like, nope. Sorry, we're getting serious. Can't do that. I chuckled a little bit at it, but yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's also kind
of so it just doesn't feel like a natural thing. Like it just is.
No, it's not. It's that's to us. That's not to the other characters.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of all the movies that I've watched of places where they do that and they summarize, and like kind of like, okay, sounds fun. Like, okay,
that's kind of a Joss Whedon thing, I think. If it's done well,
Joss Whedon, done well. Of course it is.
Yeah, well, I saw. But Joss Whedon was a master of that. I think it's people that try and copy that don't do that well. I did have a couple things I really liked, and I think mainly they're Johnny moments because he's amazing. But I love that one exchange where he's in the hallway with Frankie, and he says, "Why are you so down on me? You don't even know me." She's like, "I know you very well. I read your personality profile. Confident, reckless, irresponsible, self-obsessed, bordering on narcissism." And Johnny says, "Okay, so you do know me."
That was a good one because I had that one too.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because that's the Robert Downey Jr. billionaire philanthropist playboy. Like, just throws that out, right? And
those characters would have really had a good time interacting.
Yes, they would have. They would have. I guess my favorite line, and I will say this one was good, was when Victor was showing them the video of his encounter with the Silver Surfer, and he says to him, "Well," and Ben Grimm says, "I like the part where he knocks you on your ass." Like, that was a great line, good delivery.
That's
and right
thing.
there, I was like, That's fantastic right there. That's the kind of guy that we need Michael Chiklis to be most of the time.
Yeah.
Just that quick throw it back and a little bit of sarcasm there. So that was a great one.
Well, here's my last one. It's my favorite one that's in the film, and I think it was in the trailer too, if I remember correctly, where it's right before the surfer shows up in the forest, and General Hager, as played by Underbauer, says, "Let me make this clear for you and your pack of freaks. I'm the quarterback. You're on my team. But I guess you didn't play football in high school, did you, Richards?" And he walks away, and then Reed says, and Reed, who's grown a backbone since the last film, which I love, he says, "You're right. I didn't. I stayed in and studied like a good little nerd. And 15 years later, I'm one of the greatest minds of the 21st century. I'm engaged to the hottest girl on the planet, and the big jock who played football in high school, he's standing right in front of me asking for my help. And I say he's not going to get a damn thing unless he does exactly what I tell him and starts treating my friends and me with some respect." And Hager is like, "All right, give him what he wants." And Sue says, "I'm so hot for you right now." And then Johnny comes up from behind and says, "Me too."
Yes. That was good.
That just nails all four of those characters perfectly in that scene.
Yes. I had that
absolutely
same thing
Johnny
on
would
there.
do that. It makes sense that Sue would feel that way. Reed's finally stepping. Oh, just perfect moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That was good. That was a good line. I did like the part where Susan Storm said, "Do you know I can create a force field inside someone's body and expand it until they explode?"
Yeah.
And I was like, where were you when Thanos was around? Like, come on. Seriously.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I like it was good though. That was a good line. She's a little intimidating.
Some other things. I mean, we mentioned earlier the body language with the surfer moving in front of Sue, which I'm glad you brought that up because I thought that was a huge character move for him. And we know, as the viewer, most of us know the Silver Surfer is ultimately going to be a good guy, right? But this is probably the first moment I believe it is the first moment in this film where we get a hint that he's not the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's huge. We start that ice starts to thaw a little bit. But I just loved every time that Andre Braugher's General Hager would just directly stare at people and not blink.
Yeah.
Like he'd so no nonsense.
That's how he played Brooklyn Nine-Nine. That's what he was like.
Captain Holt, exactly. The fact that Johnny makes steam come off of him in the hallway, just classic Johnny Storm. Love that so much.
General Hager, the one part about him that I thought was too far, the moment they go and capture the Silver Surfer, like here's this alien who's pretty much just had his way with Earth for a while, like for the last couple days, right? Just carved a hole out in London, right? And took it through. And my thought is the first thing you do the moment you capture him, get him off his surfboard is you start torturing him. Like that's a great idea. That's a great plan. Let's go with that plan. Let's see if that's going to work against this all-powerful guy who just showed up from a different planet. Like, I just kind of thought, man, that's a guy. He deserved to get killed in the end. So,
brutal. That's a brutal death, though. I remember being shocked by that when I first saw that.
Yeah. As far as another character, I think Doom on the surfboard was very disappointing to me.
Okay.
Like he, at first, when they're chasing him with the car, I thought this is his moment where he's like, I'm going to take this job. I don't care about Earth. I'm going to become the Herald, right? Silver Surfer's done. Like I thought that's what he's going to do, but he didn't use the surfboard. Like, and then granted, he's new to it. The Silver Surfer was, he flipped through it. He held on, like he did all these other things with it. And so I think, but I feel like at the same time, it's like, Doom on there was disappointing. Like we're getting a Marvel Doomsday movie, which is going to highlight him as the next Thanos, right? So in my mind, I feel like he's supposed to be this incredibly powerful villain, and I don't feel like we got that. This is the one actor in here that I don't think nailed this part.
We talked about that when I think it was just Justin and I on the first one. And he's the weak link in this. And like he's a fine actor. I just don't think he's a good Doom. And a lot of that is his voice. It's just not low enough. Like he's not intimidating. He's a weasel. He's evil. Yeah. But he's not intimidating.
I just don't think they knew how to draw it right or create him dark enough early in these MCU days, kind of getting going and
and one thing we talked about the last time was how his costume, while it was more or less comic accurate, it didn't make a whole lot of sense for him to have that costume within the context of the story. Where I noticed this one is a lot more toned down. This version is a lot more utilitarian, and I thought that worked a little bit better. Like the hood and stuff makes sense too, because he's kind of hiding his face, you know, when he's scarred and whatever, because we know he's super vain. But he doesn't have like the big bright circles on his chest and stuff, like kind of like Thor's, you know, costume had and whatnot.
Yeah.
Which I thought was better. I'm curious what Justin thought about that, and I'll have to ask him about that. And then you alluded to like about all the product placement. Like I love when Johnny first shows up in his new uniform, just he looks like a NASCAR.
Yeah,
he shows up.
Yeah,
and sees no problem with that.
He does it. He's a celebrity. He's like, hey, we're getting endorsement deals. I mean, they're not getting paid to be heroes. Yeah, so you might as well get paid somewhere else. Peter Parker could learn a thing or two, I guess. So then he wouldn't be so broke all the time.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned Doomsday, and like this is as good a time as any. And if you're listening to this, you're probably going, "Hey, are you going to talk about the Doomsday cast announcement? Did you watch any of that today? Did you take a small detour?"
Could they make that any slower? I needed that to go faster.
That was ridiculous. But what did you think? Was there anybody? Clearly, there's more people coming. Like,
yeah.
Like, sorry guys. Like, if you haven't seen this, like, tune out for like 10 seconds. But like, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are going to be in this movie, right?
That was the name I was looking for, honestly.
Yeah.
I was sitting there going, give me Ryan Reynolds, because I know he's in there. Thor cries. I want to know why Thor's crying.
Please pay that off. Please pay that off.
Pay that off. I need a payoff of anything paid off. If they don't, I will give them 1 star on IMDb and on Rotten Tomatoes all the time. So, I want Thor to pay off with Ryan Reynolds.
Here's my overall thoughts on that casting was, I mean, I love Chris Hemsworth, and hopefully he can kind of redeem himself from the Thor: Love and Thunder, which that movie was awful. And having Tom Hiddleston's going to be in it, so we're going to get Thor and Loki together, I'm assuming. Yeah. It's not Lucasfilm. They actually do put their characters together.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a dig. That's a Star Wars dig. I don't care about Shang-Chi at all. I don't care about the Thunderbolts. I don't care about the new Fantastic Four. I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe that movie will blow me away. I don't care. But what I like to see, and these guys are old, and that's great that you got them back. But like Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Kelsey Grammer, Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler is back.
Yes.
Rebecca Romijn is back. So, like, are they going to pay off the mother and son thing there? I hope so. James Marsden is back. So if those guys are all... I love James Marsden, too.
So we're going to X-Men.
Yeah. So if all those people are back, there's no way Hugh Jackman's not also back.
So if we're getting Rebecca Romijn,
does
that mean Jennifer Lawrence is out as...
Well, I didn't see anybody from the new cast.
No, nobody from the Days of Future Past or whatever.
No,
whatever.
They're doing that. So, yeah, I wouldn't. But if they tie in the multiverse, which is very likely, I mean, you have Downey playing Doom, so you are already.
Yeah.
Right. So, still on the table, and who knows how big it parts, but still on the table is all of the newer cast. All of the Spider-Men, the various Spider-Men.
Give me a Toby chair. Give me Andrew Garfield chair.
All of those things. So basically everybody that Marvel owns that's ever been in a film that's still alive and still acting is on the table. So as many as they showed, they're probably holding back 20 cameos.
Which they do well. I'm going to be honest. Marvel does this so well, keeping some of these secrets going.
But will the film be good?
Yes, it will. Because you know why? I'm going to tell you, at the end of that long list, I do love how they ended that. Oh, should I not? Okay. If you haven't seen the announcement, 5-second spoiler here. Okay. That Robert Downey Jr. is at the very end of that chair.
Well, we knew that, though.
We knew that. But to have him actually there and to kind of look down the line and kind of go, oof, like this, like that's a list. And
I love Downey, but man, he looked old.
Hey.
He is. I mean, I'm old, and he's older than me, significantly.
Oh. Like, he's got some city miles on him.
Come on, man. Let him go. Come on.
How old is he?
I don't know. How old is he? You look it up.
I'm looking it up.
While you're looking that up, I'm going to move down to setting design.
59.
Okay, wow. Sounds close. Well, he's not that much older than me. About a decade. Lots of locations in this film. I really liked, again, the showing, not telling. I think they did really, really well. Seeing the surfer show up in Japan. In the frozen ocean, seeing him fly over the Great Sphinx, and then there's snow in Egypt, L.A. and the blackout. Then he goes over to Latveria and wakes up Doom. All of these things, the speed and the elemental powers, where he's changing weather patterns.
Yes,
without any dialogue. Like there's no I like that there's no exposition that says, once there was this surfer and blah, 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 and, Galactus was feared by many. None of that. You don't need to do that. Like, I mean, he kind of does it later, like with his little television chess thingy, which is weird. And I didn't even need that.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really good job just by moving from setting to setting to setting. And then you have, Shanghai for the final battle, which is, I think, a kind of a cool location to do that.
There was some definite travel in there, and I got to wonder how they get there so fast. I mean, those jets must that fantastic car must be fantastic.
Well, so they were in Siberia. So I don't know how far Siberia is from China. I mean, it's in the same part of the world.
You're talking about a different hemisphere. I'm just going to tell you that. I mean, it's going down. So
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, okay.
And also when they were in London too, like you mentioned earlier, they have the, to kind of move on to set decoration. You have the London Eye, which was fairly new at the time when this movie
came out. They went
from
New York to London very quickly.
Yeah.
Now, hold on. Yeah. That's just the part of me that looks and sometimes I struggle with that, where you lose a sense of time in these movies. Like, I agree with you. There was some fantastic locations throughout this whole movie, and that's a highlight, that's a strength. But then sometimes I also look and go, but wait, how'd they get there so fast? I mean, Galactus is coming in 24 hours kind of thing. We ain't got time to fly, right? Like, to get there. So I struggle with that because it's kind of like that Superman movie where he lifted the kryptonite planet and the guy next to me goes, oh, that's just too much. Like, he gave up at that point. And I was like, listen, you bought the ticket. You knew what you were getting into.
It's a comic book movie, dude.
Just believe, all right? And so I feel like that sometimes I have to remind myself. All these settings are wonderful. Let's go with it.
Yep, let's go with it. But I like that sequence a lot. That's one of my favorite sequences, though, is the London Eye, that giant Ferris wheel. I think that showcases the team's powers really, really well. You see everybody in action. There was a camera move I wanted to mention earlier, and I neglected to, where they show it's like extreme low angle looking up at Ben as he's looking up at how he's holding the thing, which also gives us a sense of scale at how large that thing is, and also how strong he is. It does all of those things. And then we haven't really talked about Johnny and his immaturity and all this when the powers start changing and how that malfunctions horribly in that section. Because he gets cocky and he runs into Reed and all of those things happen. Great sequence for all those things. It pays that off too.
Yeah. Well, and it sets up the payoff later in the movie where he's like, okay,
yes,
we can't take them all four together, but how about one of us with all four powers?
Let's not make this about me. Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
That one was.
See, there's moments
that
in this
was
movie
good.
that I really like.
Yes.
And when we get to the hero's journey part, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But
I think
some fun props in this one. I'd like the PDA always cracks me up because this is like right before smartphones, like right before.
Yeah.
Right before. One of my favorite props, though, I like, for whatever reason, I like the cake topper. Like that close up of the cake topper, like that was fun. Like you have like she's clear and he's wrapped around her a couple of times.
Yeah,
that was kind of clever.
At the very end, the wedding in Japan, why was that all of a sudden I was kind of like, for prop wise, I was like, why did we all, like, we had a whole line of people, we had no idea who they were. There was no mention of them. There were no lines in there. They just were waving at them at the end. And I thought,
they're celebrities.
What? But what? Yeah, okay. I don't know.
We paid off the wedding thing from earlier.
I felt like that was a prop. Like that was let's put them, one more area.
People are props.
The people were props. Like what was who were they? Why were they there? And we went to we went from a New York wedding with Dolce, as that tux, to all of a sudden, now we're going traditional Japanese.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It just threw me off. It was the same priest. I think that's the part. That's where I'm like, wait, we're bringing in the same priest, but all of a sudden we're going with a traditional clothing from. It threw me off. That's where I was like, prop. It was a prop.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at characters and seeing who we haven't talked about. We have not talked about, which is one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos.
Yes.
Playing himself, being a Stan Lee.
Stan Lee.
Yeah, nice try, pal.
That was good. He's trying to get it. You're not on the list. You didn't get it. I got an invitation.
No. One of my favorite things about this, we've mentioned Andre Braugher a lot, and I think both of us are big fans of Andre Braugher, and I've loved everything he's in. Like, he's so good in this. He's good in, obviously, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He was great on House. He's been in homicide, lots of different things. Did you know, because I did this in research, that at one point, and this is from the director, Tim Story, originally that character was Nick Fury.
Oh.
But they did not have the rights, and so that evolved into a newer character. But yeah, we were that close to having Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. in this film.
Could have.
So that's kind of fun. You mentioned Lawrence Fishburne. Doug Jones does plays the physical body of the Silver Surfer, who's been in a ton of different things. A lot of Guillermo del Toro stuff, of course.
Yeah, Doug Jones is a definite. That body type was a very different. I'm sure there was part of the suit there, but he was
great physical actor.
Yeah.
Kerry Washington is back as Alicia Masters. A little bit more to do in this film. She's great and small, not a very big part, but she's great in it. Bo Garrett's the one who plays Frankie Ray. I think that's about all the ones that I really needed to talk about.
Real quick, I'm just looking up Silver Surfer costume from Doug Jones, and like in my mind, I pictured this as a lot of CGI just with his mannerisms, but he is full costumed here.
Is it for the like the interrogation stuff where he's like the gunmetal color?
Even with the super silver stuff, like he is in this chair and he is glowing. Like I'm sure they CGI'd to add to it a little.
Yeah.
But that is him, and
that's part of the reason it holds up so well. That it's not a solely CGI character.
Because that is special effects right here. That looks fantastic.
Augment it with CGI. Yeah, that's
yes.
I think that's when it works best.
I gotta agree with you because I know Justin loves a good CGI sunset. That I think that something like this where you keep a little practical effect is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. Anything else characters you want to talk about before we move on?
I think we're good.
Okay, so I kind of alluded to it earlier that a lot of this film, there's multiple themes happening in this film, but Johnny's kind of journey to responsibility, I think, is kind of the through line for this, where we see him, like, again, first time we see him where he's, the costume is covered in ads, and then he's, Dolce. Like, he doesn't want to, like, it's an emergency, dude. Like, this is more important. And he's, super cocky and careless, and, Frankie understands that he is and rejects him. But ultimately at the end, he steps up and saves the day.
Perfect example of that, Craig, because I absolutely agree with you, is when they're in London and he collapsed into Reed and took his powers and almost caused that thing. When they all get back together and he goes to Sue, Reed says to him, Johnny, stay back before you get somebody killed.
Yes.
Like they were looking down on him like, you're still that cocky kid. You're still the young guy. You're still screwing up. And you know what I mean? Yeah. It kind of puts him into that light, like you're saying, and then he has to grow up. And then at the end of the movie, all of a sudden, he's the one who rises up and takes all four powers. So,
yeah,
which was good.
Well, and you also have, another theme through this is that you have Reed and Sue having this kind of desire for normalcy and to break away from the Fantastic Four and to just go off and to be the end of that team. And then I love that at the end you kind of have this reconciliation because, Reed has it like says, who says you have to be normal to have a family? Where they've everyone's grown through this film. They've all kind of come to terms with who they are and what their lot in life is, and that they don't have to separate. There is no normal way to do things. Like this is your reality.
Yeah.
And then of course you kind of have the redemption of the Silver Surfer through self-sacrifice and becoming this hero that we haven't gotten to see pay off yet. But it was definitely headed that way.
Yeah.
As far as world building goes, this is we talked about this repeatedly. Like, does this film fit in a pre-MCU where it's all connected? And this one for me breaks it pretty hard because most of these films have been fairly localized. We talked about this a lot with the Spider-Man movies. Like, it's all in New York, and he wouldn't need to ask for help. This is a world-ending event, and not one that happens quickly. Like, there has been lots and lots of precursors with all the holes. Like, there's no way that if the X-Men exist in this universe, and 20th Century Fox has the rights to both of them, there's no way the X-Men doesn't get involved.
Yes. And it feels very much like the end of Doctor Strange, too. Like, like, that's how that felt to me. And so I feel like at that point, you've got to have other superheroes who'd be like, hey, we're coming into the thing, but it's very standalone. So,
I mean, not that that's wrong. I mean, because we had not the norm was that you just had heroes in their own film. It was, next year, 2008, we have, Tony Stark shows up at the end of Incredible Hulk and blows our minds.
Yes,
that's not even in suit, just having a conversation in that.
So
film.
looking back in a movie like this, you have to take that with a grain of salt. That you have to take and say this was pre-movies where they said, okay, it's time for crossovers. It's time for admitting other people are in this world, in this universe, shared. So,
but again, that as this is the the 16th film that we've covered in this series, really most of it, I don't think anything contradicts. I mean, we have some casting things that are duplicates, but tonally, it all fits really, really well with each other. So, I mean, the Punisher might be the one outlier, but that's because it's an R-rated film. And Daredevil, I suppose, the extended cut. So, final thoughts, Corey, on Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Craig, I'm going to tell you, it's not my favorite of the movies. It's definitely watch it once, be like, oh, good entertainment. I think a younger viewer would definitely like it too. There's definitely some fun there, but there's some boring parts to it. There's some cheesy parts to it, some cheesy dialogue. I guess there's elements of this that I like even more than the other Fantastic Four that came out. And it gives me hope. Is the new Fantastic Four going to be good? Like maybe sometimes seeing these movies go and the flaws in them, these writers have sat down and said, we got to do this right in the next one. But I also sometimes feel like, look, there's just some characters that are comics that don't make the best movies for standalones. Hulk, I don't think makes a good one. I know you like the Incredible Hulk, but
have you seen the Incredible Hulk yet?
No, I have not. I've seen clips of it.
It's been months.
Listen.
You gotta watch it, dude. It's good.
I know. So there's just some movies that I don't think make a good.
That is a hard one to adapt.
Good on-screen adaptation, and I think Fantastic Four might be one of those for me. Like I just can't, because they always make Sue Storm this absolute dynamite woman, and Reed is never one that you look and you go, yeah, I can't. Those two can't. No, they don't fit together. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't flow for me, and there's not a lot of chemistry there. I'm hoping they get that right with the next one. I mean, it's Pedro Pascal; he's got chemistry, so it's
that's. But
I don't know. I'm hopeful. Like, okay, you had these bad films that everybody knocked on, so maybe you're going to make the next one better.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they do, but I don't know. It's a good movie. It's not a great movie. It's definitely I've watched it, and now I can go forward. So.
To be clear, I really like Pedro Pascal as an actor. I just don't think he's a good Reed Richards. I think that is hey, you know what? We don't have Pedro Pascal in the MCU yet. Let's put him here. Yeah, type of thing. He doesn't. Yeah, I don't get a Reed Richards vibe from him, and maybe I'll be proven wrong. I'll be happy to be proven wrong. I like the rest of that cast quite a bit. So we'll see.
I just don't think the stretchy man is a superpower that plays well. On
film, yeah.
Captain Marvel, I didn't think that, or not Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel. I just don't think it plays well. This big, stretchy superpower. It's not the strongest one.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but I will say, I really like the cast of this film.
Yes,
a lot. I think they're all cast really, really well. And just to kind of add to that, before this film came out, there was talk of the third film, which they had originally been signed for, and then that didn't happen. But one of the things that I've been reading through, I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have got to see that, was that Tim Story, the director of this film, was really keen to put Djimon Hounsou as Black Panther. And Djimon Hounsou's great and everything, and he would have been an amazing T'Challa, I think. So that would have been fun.
I'm just looking it up.
Yeah. So I mean, as much as, again, with the announcements today about Doomsday, and we got the new Fantastic Four cast in there, that's, I guess, kind of a bittersweet thing too, that we won't get this cast again.
Yeah.
So, but again, we got the nice coda in Deadpool and Wolverine, and that was a nice touch. So
that was good.
Big fan of that. Anything else on this film before we wrap?
No, we're good.
Okay. So as we close, we just want to say thank you guys so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Email us at readingbetweenreels@gmail.com or use the SpeakPipe app on our website. If you enjoyed the show, please like, follow, or subscribe, and review us on iTunes or Spotify. And one last thing. Our next episode is going to be our first live show and a discussion of our top 5 remakes. Join us on April 9th at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time and check the show notes for the link. You can also send us an email or voicemail about your choices for the top 5 remakes, and we'll share it on the next episode.